What's up, everybody? We wanted to take a quick moment to remind each of you to please like, share, comment, subscribe to the podcast. Tommy,
Ring that bell.
ring the bell. It goes a long way to support the podcast. Besides that, Tommy and I offer online coaching. The links for that will be below. The link for my merch store will be below as well. And without further ado, we bring to you a Thinking Man's podcast. A Thinking Man's podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of a Thinking Man's podcast. I'm your host. My name is Joseph PIRCHER. With me, as always, my good friend Tommy Stiles out on the West Coast. Tommy, what's going on, man? How are you?
Pretty good, man. Staying busy, but it's a good place to be.
Busy keeps the lights on.
That's right.
So last week we had a listener Q&A, and thanks to everybody that did send questions in. Even if it was like previously on different YouTube videos, whatever the case is, we appreciate it. And so this week, I think we're going to dive into PEDs. And obviously that's something we've discussed at length in different contexts on this show. We previously have an entire episode on contest prep PEDs and how those can be designed and some of the considerations that go along with it. So today we are going to be discussing off-season PEDs. And putting on obscene amount of muscle. So, Tommy, I'm going to kick it over to you and kind of let you start us off. So wherever you want to start with, we'll just let it flow.
Yeah. So a little different than the contest prep. We're growing now. So you're using PEDs to put on new tissue. Everybody's got their own school of thought. Anything we say here isn't it's not black and white like the whole
Right.
Every episode we put out. These are just considerations. These might be things we've done, mistakes we've made, stuff we've learned from working with clients, working with different coaches ourselves, what have you. So I think when I look at a off-season PED cycle, the first thing, testosterone. That's what it's based around. Speaking for males. Everybody wants to get caught up in the esters. Enanthate or cypionate. Don't complicate it. Don't waste your time with pro. In my opinion, it's just it's more injections, it's more volume, and it's gonna leave more pit potentially. So I don't do it. I don't have any of my clients do it. I've never done pro. So test is test, in my opinion. I think enanthate or cypionate is perfect. You're going to need to find the number for you that is the upper limit of where you aren't going to aromatize. So basically, as a male, you got to watch gyno. That's the number one thing we have to look out for when pushing cycles is gyno. So this is where individual variance comes in. You and I are a perfect example. Like I can handle a lot of testosterone and really have no issues with estrogen side effects. You, on the other hand, are different. So that means clients are different. I've got some clients that are hyper responders that a little bit of test can bump them well beyond the upper end of normal, but it also kicks their estrogen up a good bit. So That's where that secondary compound would come in. And this is where we've talked about it before, but mistakes were made in the past, and it wasn't necessarily a mistake at the time. It was just like, we didn't know then what we know now. So the second compound for me personally, it's going to be test. And then the second compound would be primobolan or masteron. And I've alluded to in a previous episode, masteron just actually has too strong of effect on my estrogen. You want to control estrogen, but you don't want to smash it down so low that you can't grow. You need estrogen to put on size. The goal is to mitigate side effects. So you're going to add in that secondary compound as a way to drive up total anabolics, but also as a way to control estrogen. Whether you use Primo or Masteron is probably going to be budget dependent. Whether you can get real primobolan and know that it's real. The guy you're getting it from is going to tell you it's real. I promise.
Oh, dude, this is the shit that Nick Walker uses.
You know what I'm saying? So it is worth sending off to get tested if you are unsure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, those are kind of the basis of how the cycle would be designed. And then we
Yeah.
have a couple of different directions we can go from there. But I'll kick it to you and you can kind of play out anything I said, what I missed.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're right on the money with all the same stuff. So I don't want to sound too redundant. As a general idea, definitely like we want to be aware of aromatizing so heavily that we're getting that gyno kind of that tissue buildup behind the nipple, any type of sensitivity, swelling, lactation, any of those things are bad news. And then there are some different ones too, like lack of sex drive, I think, and lack of erection quality could be another sign for males that testosterone to estrogen ratio is off. And it's difficult to say anecdotally, and that's why we're such big advocates for getting blood work, because I've had those issues when estrogen is too high. I've had those issues when estrogen is too low. So it's worth it to go get your blood work done to kind of solidify what your testosterone dose is going to be. In my case, with the Victor Black PED model that John and I use, we're trying to find the max testosterone that you can handle without needing a aromatase inhibitor to manage it. Now, like you were mentioning, the secondary compound, why you might choose one over the other. If we're talking about DHT derivatives, the two main ones for injectables, like you said, are going to be Primobolan and Masteron. And everything that you mentioned as far as why we would choose one or the other makes complete sense. It's, like affordability, availability, reliability, but then also, like you said, looking at the stack design as like a big puzzle as opposed to just things in a vacuum. Perfect example. We had somebody on that Q&A that we did last week leave a comment like, why Masteron, or why so much Masteron in regards to my cycle? And it's like, you just gave that answer for me, Tommy. I aromatize from testosterone at a higher rate than what seems to be average, helping as many people as I do. So because of that, I choose Masteron as my kind of anabolic driving compound. And so I do get a little bit of that kind of estrogen modulating effect from using Masteron as like my main anabolic driver. I haven't seen that same type of response from Primo, and I also just truly don't have a great source for Primo, so I use Masteron. So I think that covers everything that you touched on or we touched on. I think two big ones, like as far as directionally how we can go with this, two big ones that would be next on the list to discuss would be these kind of situational compounds. I believe that's how John describes it in J3 University. So it's not like some of these compounds are labeled as never use or don't ever use these, but they're going to be more situational than your test base and a DHT derivative. Those are kind of almost looked at like baseline use. And then there's different situations for using different compounds. So the ones that come to mind for me, and we can dive into this as the next segment of this, would just be 19 NORs. So your nandrolone, both in NPP and DECA form, and then trenbolone, which is worth discussing, even though we're discussing only off season. But I think we probably both agree the main application for that would be in contest prep, but I still think it's worth touching on. So how do you view those compounds?
Well, 19 NORs in general can affect me psychologically. So that's one thing I've noticed.
Yes. More so than any other compounds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With just test or Primo or, I don't have any issues. It's
right.
The only thing I notice is just increased fullness in the gym, increased sex drive. I don't even hold that much water because I don't aromatize too heavily. So,
right.
But the mental aspect definitely kicks in from 19 NORs.
So can you talk about that a little bit? What are you noticing? Like, I feel like, not to pry at you because it might be like a more personal thing, but I think there could be a lot of really good takeaways for people that are listening, especially younger guys, because I didn't have any idea to even consider how these things might be affecting me psychologically. Man, probably until I was like 28-ish, where I was like,
Yeah.
oof, man, I look back and realize like, man, there were certain periods I was like off the rails mentally, like in contest prep on a lot of trend. Um,
Yeah.
and you look back and realize in the, but it's difficult in the moment. So anything that you could give us, like, let's say you introduce some NPP in your off-season cycle. What are some of the first telltale signs that you'll notice, like, hey, this is actually affecting me psychologically more so than I would like?
So, I'm pretty chill and even paced. I don't really, I don't react to stress in a way that I lose my shit. I was a firefighter, so I learned to,
Yeah, you have that stoic mentality.
keep
Yeah.
a steady hand in the highest stress situations. So with like something like DECA or Tren, I feel like it's easy to get stuck in fight or flight mentally, even if I'm not doing anything. Like I just like start to think about all the shit I want to accomplish in my life. Like I can almost rev myself up to the point of it's a negative because I'm just sitting in this chair talking to you, but I'm getting like fired up and my, veins feel like there's fire coursing through them. So that's what I like. The mental is just the aggression that I'm living with at rest. And then, couple that into any incident that may happen in public, something stupid at the gym, somebody cuts me off in traffic. There's now a decision that like it's a split second, but if I react strongly, that might come out very, very aggressive. If I think, which I'm pretty good about thinking before I react, okay, but then if I internalize that and don't deal with it, then it just builds a fire. So it's setting me up to. So it just, I've talked about all the different things I do. I think you just can't be naive to what these compounds can do. And like you, I think, I probably did 3 or 4 cycles without even fucking having an idea what they were doing. Until I finally kind of honed in on it. Now it's just something to stay self-aware of, but it's definitely something I notice with 19 Nors in general. It's not just trend for me. Like I haven't ran trend in months, and I currently have DECA in play, and it's something that's present in my mind.
Interesting.
So that's one component of it, and that could be individual. Some people run nandrolone only cycles and keep the test at like TRT level. And I can't speak on that because I've never done it or guided someone through it, but I've heard a couple people talk about it. And so the big thing with DECA and nandrolones in general, well, DECA MPP, let's stick with those for right now. You hear the classic DECA dick. That's because 19 Nors have an effect on prolactin. They're going to increase it. So that can also cause gyno symptoms. So if you have a 19 Nor in place, first of all, just throwing in an AI may do nothing because your estrogen may be fine. So that's why you just said blood work is important. I recently, I had a lump behind the nipple, kind of not hardening, but it was definitely present. And I was having some estrogen-like symptoms. Kind of bloating was kicking in. Sex drive was there, but the erection quality was 50-50. So, and I was starting to I never get acne, and I got a couple like acne-like, cysts on my shoulders, night sweats. So all these things are starting. Knowing I'm on, I need to get blood work for estradiol and prolactin. Estradiol came back completely in the middle of the range. It was the prolactin that was elevated. So that's why blood work's important. You can't just blindly treat based off what you think.
The blood work unlocks all the answers that you're looking for.
Exactly. So, I do like DECA as much as I said about the psychological stuff. I feel I can control that. That's just part of the game. I like it for the joint protection. I do feel very, very strong on it, and I don't feel as inflamed as I can get strong without it, but I picked up a lot more nagging tendonitis type injuries in the years I didn't have it in, because I was like everyone else. I tried it once in like 2015, and I got the classic DECA dick, and I was like, oh, never again. I'm not doing this. And really, it was just poor cycle design and not understanding, estradiol and prolactin. So and I don't think I had Cialis at the time, but
Yeah, those research chemicals weren't kicking in just yet.
I think it's dosed like how much you can handle. The TRT, like TRT clinics carry DECA and they do prescribe it. I believe the TRT dose is 100 mgs a week. So I think somewhere starting 100 to 200, if you've never ran DECA, is reasonable. And I think most people go, I did too, go way off the rails with their first time using. I probably use like 500, which is crazy starting dose when you've never experienced that drug. So
really any of them, dude, any of the 19 NORs, like we talked about this a little bit with Trent on the pre-contest stack design. I think they're honestly, and like part of this conversation is probably going to drift towards like bodybuilding becoming too soft. Like people forget that this is supposed to be like a war of attrition and it's a nasty fucking wacky game that we're in. But with that said, I think 19 NORs are abused, like point blank. Like the dosing of them, the standard that everyone has just come to accept, I think is abuse.
Yeah, I could see that. I think it just, and we can kind of get into this on a different topic, but your level, your skin in the game kind of dictates your dose too. Like,
absolutely.
Are you on the national level? Are you a super heavyweight? Are you a heavyweight trying to become a super heavyweight? Are you a classic physique competitor? Is this your first or second cycle? Right. All of these things play into it. So, like, it's nothing we're saying is black and white. So what I'm doing isn't what, my couple of my clients that are running their first cycles are doing. I mean, they're not even using DECA. That's my point. Is like
it's situational. That's a perfect point.
And as they're what we're recommending necessarily, it's not like the cap.
Right.
The dose is never a cap. It may, it's all individual.
The dosing is always a spectrum. It's from here to here. Like
the just where
do you fall in it? And to your point, I would say the additional consideration, like, it's like skin in the game. How much muscle mass have you put on? How heavy are you walking around at? All these different things. But also I almost look at it like something like dosing is something to be earned. Like, are you nailing it every day? Do you sleep 7+ hours a day? Do you consistently nail all your food with no additional, cheat meals and off-plan food? Like, are you someone that is actually nailing it every day? Are you maxing out the current program? All of the variables, are they maxed out? Yes, every day, month after month. Okay, well then now we can talk about escalating things. But if you're somebody that's fucking 1 foot in, 1 foot out, you don't belong on drugs, period, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's and that's where drugs cover up mistakes. So you see a guy who might look halfway decent who misses meals every day, training's half-assed, doesn't get enough sleep, skips cardio.
Right.
Yeah, he looks good while he's on the cycle, and then
see him 8 weeks into coming off and see what he looks like.
That when he comes off, you don't see him around the gym anymore.
Yeah,
he's fucking done training.
Yeah,
he's eating fast food and sitting on the couch watching Netflix, and then when it's time to start another cycle, he shows up and starts training.
Now he's motivated. Yeah,
and it's just a vicious recomp. It's not even adding new tissue,
right?
Because you dicked around the whole time you came off. So
yeah,
those are the gym class hero guys. I love watching them cycle through every year. But switching over to Tren, I think I have used Tren in the off season a couple times. I wouldn't buy it. 400 milligrams, just way too fucking much. I couldn't eat enough food. I was just mowing through calories. So if there is an application for it, I'm not saying there's not. I think it's at a crazy low dose, like maybe 10 milligrams a day. I think it could be a tool. You're in an extended off season and you want to push a little bit longer as a recomp tool. Something like I said, 10 megs a day. There's application there, but there's a lot of things. I mean, all the things we've talked about with Trent, you need to sleep to grow. If Trend's going to affect sleep, don't put it.
And you need to eat to grow. I know people like one of the things personally for me that I like about using Trenbolone pre-contest is for whatever reason, it seems to curb my appetite slightly. So I
You
could
think
never,
that's
I
'cause it
could,
causes GI issue or GI distress?
yeah, like I get like burpee and I have less of an appetite, which like, for the context in a contest prep, you're like, okay, things could be worse. This is better than it feeling like my stomach is eating itself. But in the off season, it's like the same discussion with orals, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But it's like, man, if this compromises my ability to get down huge amounts of food, it's not worth it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of, I mean, I've done it. So I can say like, I
Yeah.
will never, probably, I'm not going to say I'll never use tren again in the off season, but I don't think it would be above 10 milligrams a day for a very, very short duration, maybe at the end of a blast. And that's where
Yeah.
like the oral discussion could be like, you know, everything I did wrong in the off seasons can be circulated around taking orals. They all destroy my appetite other than Anavar. And we've talked about it. Anavar, as I love it for all the positives, the one negative is it destroys my lipid panel. So
Yeah.
is that worth it in the off season when you have food as the main driving tool of strength? I don't think so. So
And
maybe
doses are probably all the other, like the total dosage of your entire stack is probably at its highest at that point. So it's like, man, all these other things are already in play. Does this even make sense?
I could see like maybe the last 4 weeks of a blast, maybe a little
Yeah.
bit of a push with
Maybe training has hit a wall or something.
yeah, and just a little bit of a strength bump to lead into that maintenance phase or that hold phase, whatever you're going into.
Yeah.
I could see the merit for that. But I don't think these orals and trenbolone need to be built into the stack design, because if you're doing it right, I think you can, you and I both have like 30 weeks you can be in a growth phase and
Oh,
beyond PPs. We haven't really talked about like where you start the cycle isn't max dosages. You're going to escalate up as needed.
Yes.
There's no like, well, at 4 weeks in, we're going to bump this up to this. In 8 weeks, it's all how are you looking? How's the feedback?
Yeah.
Is food also like food's supposed to be driving up at the same time as gear? That's the idea of the whole growth phase is to push calories higher than you could without the PEDs.
Yeah.
So it all works synergistically together. But 19 NORs are a tool that can be used. But if you're someone who knows you have issues with it, just it's not a tool for you. I can get along good with DECA now that the way I have my stack design with Test and Primo. So Test Primo DECA is my off season. That's where I'm at, and I don't need anything. I don't need tren. I did tren, but I don't think it was put me in my best place. But I did take a higher dose, so that's where I'm at with anabolics in the off season.
Yeah.
We can kind of get into growth hormone, but I'll kick it over to you to hear what you got to say about the 19 NORs.
Yeah, I've had some varied experiences with 19 NORs. Same thing. My first like off-season DECA experience was a poor one just because everything else around it was designed poorly. And I got like those kind of gyno, like puffy symptoms from it on top of having the erection quality go to absolute shit. And it freaked me out. And I was like, man, I love bodybuilding and I'll do anything for it, but I'm not taking anything that makes my dick not work. So there's other ways to do it. So that was my thought process on it for a long time. And then I've sprinkled in a little NPP here and there, and I do much better with that. I think I do just generally much better with shorter esters because they're just in and out quicker. And so if a problem does arise on a shorter ester, you can easily just remove it and that side effect goes away quickly, as opposed to having, and like DECA is a long ester where it's like, man, you could pull it out completely and you might still be seeing and feeling those side effects from it 2 or 3 weeks later. So, like you said, so my current design, I have tests just at a baseline. I use Masteron as like my driving anabolic. And then at some point midway through this kind of push phase that I'm in, I will probably sprinkle some NPP in at most up to 140 milligrams per week. And I do everything daily. So that's 20 milligrams a day. And then to your comment about trend, same thing. Like this upcoming contest prep, trend will be part of the cycle at some point. And I will probably start with 10 milligrams a day and at some point work to 20 milligrams a day. And that would be the max. So like you said, all the positives, I think, having those three different families represented where you have testosterone based, DHT based, 19 nor, all three of those work very well synergistically together. Like those are the three families that you want to have represented, especially in a growing phase. I mean, it really doesn't make a difference what phase you're in, because like the food and the output will determine whether or not you're in a surplus or you're in a deficit. But I think they absolutely have their application. And that's why I think a good term for them is situational. I'm not someone that's going to say I'll never use or I'll never have someone use trend in an off season, because then when the day comes when that perfect situation arises, I'm going to look like an idiot and like I put my foot in my mouth. But I've been in situations where I've used trend blown, and it was in a similar situation like you said. I've always done these long off seasons. Maybe you push calories to grow for 20 weeks, 24 weeks. And let's say health markers are still in a fairly good spot. You have maybe 4 to 6 weeks left on the current cycle. That might be a good time where you push yourself, like, just as an example, let's say you have 4 or 6 weeks left on gear. You just did a big long push. Body fat's probably a little bit higher than we want it to be. You can use those last 4 or 6 weeks to get into a pretty aggressive deficit where you pull off a lot of that excess body fat quickly, and you don't sacrifice your training or your recovery because PEDs are still in. And even more so, you've added this additional tool of trenbolone where, like you said, 10 or 20 milligrams a day for something like 4 to 6 weeks. That could be an application. That's not something I'm, jumping out of a window to recommend to everybody, but I can think of different scenarios where there would be an application. So that's generally my approach to 19 NORs. It's like, as far as NPP or DECA, it's going to be the final kind of as needed piece to an off-season stack design. And then trenbolone is just very, very situational and context dependent, but I would never say never. So, I think the two other pieces that we probably wanted to talk on as far as straight up PEDs would be growth hormone and orals. Why don't we dive into growth hormone first? Because you kind of touched on orals already and kind of what your stance is, but we can come back to it. But for whatever reason, man, growth hormone seems to be this topic that has just all this mystique around it. Every time we post about it or talk about it in the show, that's the one that gets the most engagement. So where are you at off-season growth hormone usage, both for yourself and then like considerations that could help guide the big picture for anybody in their own context?
Well, we've talked about it. I mean, as much as you can afford. Seriously, I mean, within reason. I mean, if you're somebody who's got a trust fund, you could probably take on more than I can, but that doesn't mean you need that much. I think, if I'm someone, the way I started on growth hormone was 3 IUs was my starting. I think 4 for bodybuilding purposes is a good starting point.
Agreed.
2 for females. And you can stay there. Growth hormone, you don't need to come on and off. I think you get more out of your time off of anabolics by staying on growth. So
agreed.
4 is kind of that sweet spot. The one thing we're paying attention to with growth hormone is insulin sensitivity. So pay attention to your blood glucose, your A1C. And this is where, like, just because you can stay lean on growth, you can stay leaner on growth hormone. I don't care what anyone says. You can eat shitty, stay leaner. Yeah. That does not mean what's going on internally is beneficial, though. So while you're eating shitty and having abs, especially if you got trend in play with growth hormone, you're fucking diced eating McDonald's. But I guarantee your internals are fucked up, and your insulin sensitivity is probably going the wrong way.
And who's to say that anything productive is happening? Like, sure, you're not getting fat, but does that mean you're growing? No.
Doesn't mean tissue's adding.
Right.
So I think if you're, checking all your boxes as you should be, growth hormone absolutely it does make a difference. We talked about it on its own podcast. When combined with anabolic steroids, it increases skeletal muscle mass and decreases body fat.
Yeah.
How does that not sound magical in a sense? Now, it doesn't do the work for you. It doesn't make anything easier. You still got to show up and check all your boxes. But at the same time, I have seen rapid changes in my physique. And I've actually probably used less total anabolics since I've been on growth hormone over the course of the last 5 years than, I was kind of reckless in 2017 on the path I was going. I was using some pretty high numbers.
Yeah.
And if I would have kept on that, where do you go from there? You only can go up. So
right.
I had to kind of redirect and, definitely hone in and get my training even better. So if growth, maybe that makes it magical in a sense, if you can get away with less anabolic use by putting in growth hormone. Point is it works, especially like make sure it's, if it's farm grade, you're good. If you're getting a generic, make sure you send it off to get tested and make sure it's legit growth hormone. Don't waste your time with any of that other shit.
And don't too, like, we've done this, we've all done this, we've all heard this, but I would really try, if you're going to take the chance on generics, you really got to spend a couple $100 and have it sent off to be confirmed that it's real. You don't want to be one of these guys that says, oh, it makes my hands tingle. Oh, my blood glucose has gone up. Oh, I have crazy dreams when I shoot it before bed. Like any of these anecdotal pieces of feedback are not accurate enough to tell you whether or not it's worth it to spend X number of dollars per month on this product.
No, you can get that from GH secretagogues.
Yeah.
It's not, that's
yeah.
not
Take MK677 for 10 days and your blood glucose will be fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. So, 4 is kind of that sweet. That's where I'd start someone. And this is hey, what's your budget? Can you afford this? Okay. I rode 4 for 3 years straight. A couple of months I might have taken off while I was moving or something, but that's all I did. I never went up, never went lower. For me, it just was like, I kept gaining, but it was almost like I was recomping as I was getting heavier over the years.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Less body fat, more muscle. That's the take home of growth combined with a cycle is less body fat, more muscle. So, where I'm at now,
what's top end? Where have you gone? Okay. 6
is where I'm at. That's top end for me. So, I could see that going higher too. That's not like a personal stoppage point. It's just, I do think you need to escalate up still at a reasonable pace. One, for obviously budget, but two, like, get stuck on a certain amount and just make sure your blood glucose, everything can stay in line.
Right.
Don't go from 4 to 8. And then, obviously there's, I've learned this just from my own body, but like growth hormone, if it's legit, everything's growing. I used to be a 7 1/4 hat size. I can't even put a 7 1/4 on my head anymore. My fingernails grow rapidly. Obviously I'm bald. I don't get the hair there, but like body hair seems to be growing. Like everything grows. Even I used to be a size 12, no problem. Like now it's like 13.
Yeah.
12 and a half.
Yeah. 13. I remember watching a video with Dr. Scott where he mentioned growth hormone, and I think dove into this on the growth hormone episode that we did. But there are people that are flat out non-responders. And he said anecdotally, one of the things to look out for is how quickly your fingernails grow back after you clip them. And like you were just saying it, as I think about this, I look down at these right now. I'm like, what the fuck? I need to clip these again. I just did these, which is a good sign. Yeah. And then same thing. I went to my parents' house recently, like a couple of weeks back. I went and saw my parents at home, and I had all these fitted hats that I had kept, like jerseys and fitted hats and all these things. And I was like, oh shit, I have a couple new pairs of J's that match these hats. Let me see what the deal is with these. Dude, and I remember these hats being big, like intentionally buying these hats to be big so that I could grow into them. And it looks like, at a baseball game, you go and get like a scoop of ice cream in a flipped over mini baseball helmet. That's what this thing looked like on my head. It sat on my head like a fucking yarmulke. It was so small on my head. So and everything grows. You're right. Everything grows. And is it magical? Does it give you the ability, if you so choose, to kind of skip out on variables? Sure. But if you listen to what Tommy and I are saying, or you were just speaking, I'm listening to all this and I'm like, man, imagine how much it works if you just nailed everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it truly, I'll never dub it a game changer, but I do think if you give me a bodybuilder who's run a couple cycles, they train like a machine, they don't miss meals, they don't bullshit, they do their cardio, they get their sleep, and I add growth hormone in, for that person, that will change the game in a different direction than it was going without it.
Yes.
So in that sense, I'm comfortable saying, yeah, it is a game changer. If you're playing the game as you should be, it changes the game vastly.
Yeah. Don't disagree at all. And like we were saying, I think it makes a lot of sense if the budget allows for it to get growth hormone. Fuck, let me try that again, huh? Maybe we could have this guy edit it out. I think it makes a lot of sense for bodybuilders, for male bodybuilders coming up, to get growth hormone in the mix early on, if the budget allows for it. Because like you said, over time, that growth hormone use will allow me to continue to progress without making drastic escalations in the anabolic use, which I think poses us a greater risk as bodybuilders, both near and long term, more so than the growth hormone. So it's like, if I can add this tool that is going to raise the floor on my progress, and then also, I don't want to say it's going to make me safer. I don't want to misguide it like that, or misword it like that, but you have a better chance of staying healthy in the long term on lower dose anabolics than you would by blasting anabolics. So the point is, it works and it can go a long way. So I view it as like a main staple of bodybuilding. Like I would have that in, like you said, even in your cruise periods in between, I would have it in. Like if you're just running TRT test, I would have at least 2 units of growth hormone in. And then, like you said, for these guys that, I don't know, man, anyone like, let's say 21 to 25, that's a couple cycles of anabolics in. They're all in on this. They nail all the variables. Yeah, I would probably go. I wouldn't drag my feet and start with 2 and then go to 3. And then, no, I'm going to put you on 4. I'm probably going to put 2 somewhere around training, whether it's pre or post, depending on what your schedule's like. And then 2 before bed, because we know that the bioavailability is best before bed because you're going to go to sleep. So I think, man, I almost would think that would be, I would like that to be in early on. And I would probably, if it's not already in, I would have that in, like in terms of making changes. If someone, let's say someone's on a test DHT modest cycle, before adding a 19 NOR, I would add growth hormone if it's not already in. Now, like you said, the 2 big considerations that can become a problem very quickly if they're unmanaged and untracked at all, which is a lot of bodybuilders just put their head in the sand about it. But in terms of things that you can track on your own on a day-to-day basis, we need to be concerned about blood glucose, like you mentioned, and blood pressure, because it's going to elicit that aldosterone response, and it needs to be managed. So that's why, anyone that follows me knows I'm an advocate for using telmisartan along with your PEDs. That was talking about a game changer. That was a life changer of a drug for me, to all of a sudden use the same dosing on PEDs. And now my blood pressure is just perfect. That was a life changer for me. So I think with those 2 kind of at home markers, we want to really stay up on those. And then with blood work, like you mentioned, insulin serum, A1C, all those things, anything glucose management related needs to be at the forefront of the decision, whether or not we're adding, whether or not we're increasing growth hormone. Those need to be a consideration. For me, as far as like sweet spot, top end, all these different things, I've found that 6 is a really good sweet spot for me. And I've broken that up differently depending on how I was training or what my schedule is. Right now, I'm doing 3 post-workout because I train after my first meal. So I go train, I come home, I have my post-workout meal, and 3 I use a growth, and then another 3 before bed. I've done multiple shots of 2 throughout the day. I've gone as high, I think I did as high as 10, and it the tingles and like the pins and needles feeling in my hands and arms got to be so dramatic that it was waking me up out of my sleep multiple times a night, to where my sleep was just fucked and I'm waking up exhausted. So obviously at that point, it's not worth it. I think moving forward, like at some point, I'm going to compete next year. I'm going to compete in August at North Americans next year. And then from that point forward, it's going to be a pretty extended onslaught of just trying to be as big as humanly possible. And so I have no doubt that that is going to come with an increased dosage of growth hormone, probably more so, like on a percentage scale, probably a greater increase to growth hormone than I am going to choose to do with anabolics. I think my current totals, I probably don't need to go up much further from where I am, in the near term, at least with actual anabolics, but I could see going up to 8 or 9 even, for growth hormone. And again, this is me 10 years in, excellent health markers, even when on cycle, and someone that does not just want to settle for, being classic or light heavyweight bodybuilding. Like the goal is to be as big as humanly possible. So, those goals and the timeline for those goals also is a consideration for what you're using and how much. So I know that was just a complete rant, and I always do this where I end up nowhere near what the topic or question was, but here we are.
Yeah, we started there and then we
it's a roundabout way. It's a roundabout path to get back to the answer. But I think the one thing that we haven't gotten to yet, other than maybe like ancillaries, like we were talking about telmisartan or maybe metformin, some of these other things we could discuss if we have time. But I think the big missing piece right now is orals. And so, you've kind of touched on how you feel personally, but then what about when you're helping others? Like, what's your big picture look on orals for the off season? Because not everyone, I've come to see this. I have that similar approach to you, where it's like, man, these things just, one, I look at them as completely cosmetic. Like, it has a visual effect to how you look while you're on them, and that disappears as soon as you take it out. So it just doesn't seem like a great long-term play, and it fucks up my appetite in the off season. But that's just me. Now I coach all these other people, and I've come to realize, yeah, man, 20 milligrams of D-ball pre-workout for somebody every day. I've seen people where it's almost like they're ravenous. Their appetite is completely unaffected. And it's like, okay, great. Yeah, we can use this tool to bust through training plateaus or body weight plateaus where I just cannot get this guy over 240 for whatever reason. And if it's not going to affect your ability to eat, like, okay, food's going to go up and I'm going to slip 20 milligrams of D-ball into your plan and we'll see how it goes. So what's been your experience like on the coaching front?
Yeah, I think I take the amount of PEDs they've done. So I think,
Yeah.
a lot of my issues is just time in the game, like digestive issues have developed because I've been, for the better part of the last 5 years, other than one contest prep, I've been jamming over 5,000 calories up to 7,700 down. And you're going to have issues when you're doing that. That's your life. So
Wait, are you telling me that you have to do things that are uncomfortable to be successful in bodybuilding?
yeah, hold that thought. We'll save that one for the finale. So, my perception of orals is just based off my own experience. But
Yeah.
I also, the younger version of me who may have only been on 3,500 calories or whatever,
Right.
I didn't have issues. Now, D-ball gave me some lower back pumps, but I don't think I would have got to the new strength levels I got to at that time without orals helping guide the pet. Like they do, they increase performance, and that's if there's a benefit to them, it's performance increase.
Yeah.
If I take an Anavar, I can go into the gym right now. Whatever movement I do will be the most weight I've done all year. I guarantee. I haven't touched Anavar all year. Anavar is that powerful for me. That's why I laugh when people talk down on it. Like, you're crazy. 20 mgs of Anavar is fucking, dude, I'll lift my car.
That and some caffeine like an hour before you train, and you're going to go in and have the training session of your life.
Yeah. So I do, I like Anavar. Other than the con of the lipid panel, it seems to be drier. It doesn't give the lower back pumps. It didn't have any effect on my appetite, so I assume it doesn't have the effect on appetite for others.
Well, it's DHT derivative, so it's not going to aromatize. It's not going to be watery. Yeah.
A good oral to include. And I will for some of my, assuming they can get real Anavar. And that's one thing you need to watch out for.
Yeah.
I personally, even when I was using orals, I just D-ball made my lower back a swimming pool. I had to wear a belt the whole training session, just to hold pressure on it. Like it just
walking around like this the whole time.
It didn't work for me. And that may have been
the worst.
The dose may have been high, but I love Anadrol.
I was going to ask you about the back pumps because I associate the lower back pumps with Anadrol, and I have no doubt looking back at it, it's because I was on 50 milligrams of Anadrol pre-workout, and I'm walking around the gym with my blood pressure at 240 over 120. So that's where that comes from.
Anadrol is another one of those drugs I can take and go PR. The kicker is like I won't want to eat for a day with taking Anadrol.
Yeah.
And then, being an off-season bodybuilder just becomes that much harder when every single bite is forced for the whole day. But you had I destroyed my logbook, but I can't eat.
Right.
But again, if I got a younger client, doesn't have the exposure, I need to push him forward into a new strength level, or like you said, a new body weight.
Yeah.
How can I do that? If I give him to push more strength, I can give him more food to, recover from or to fuel that strength. So it's a tool there. So I'm not, opposed to it for everyone just because I have issues. But I think that, a lot of the coaches that have many years in the game and a lot of the athletes that have many years in the game, it's funny, you start to listen to more and more people, and by the middle to end of their careers, everyone is just like, fuck orals. Like no one talks good about orals in the off season. They might have some good stories, or like us, they can say I'm crazy strong, but at the same time, like risk versus reward.
Yeah.
So I think there's benefit for some younger bodybuilders as like an add-on, especially if I know a guy can't get primo or master on, like what's my it's situational.
True. Yeah, that's a tough one. And it also, this is not a reason to smash that younger bodybuilder with drugs, but the fact remains is that when you're younger, your health is more resilient. It bounces back more quickly. So, you're talking about really skewing somebody's lipid profile that's 37 years old and they have a wife and 2 kids versus, some 22-year-old kid that's just dying to chase down bodybuilding and doesn't have other responsibilities. Their health is going to bounce back. It's more sensible to take a risk with a younger person whose health is in excellent shape versus someone that's probably at the end of their, bodybuilding career, so to speak, and compromising their health. So I think those are all good considerations. I'm the same way in terms of it just being, context and situation dependent. How far has that person come? And like I was saying before, is this person nailing all their variables already? Like, are they absolutely maxing out every variable and we're still at like a strength or body weight plateau? If yes, okay, then maybe it's time to talk about putting one of these tools in place. So I think that's everything PED wise. Anything else that we missed?
No, I would say a consideration of, just kind of to segue into the next thing is when to end a blast, when to end a push. Some considerations, like I think how hard you push food will almost dictate that. Obviously, there's kind of like maybe a timeline you set out for initially, or maybe you were able to extend it, or maybe you had some mid-cycle blood work and hey, it didn't like what,
Right.
or you got blood work and hey, let's call things now, whatever the case may be. But just in my experience working with others, like there is just a threshold for food at some point. Like, you can't put in more. Like you're just done for that time. Like you've exhausted how much food you can eat. Liquid carbs are like there's just no more. Sleep's probably going to hell because you're trying to get all this food in. Inflammation may be higher because of the food and the toxicity.
Undoubtedly,
So that can be seen in the pictures. You can see a fatigue. If you've looked at enough physiques, and I've seen my own, like you just look not as much. You're on a cycle, but there's no pop. Pumps are starting to disappear, which means insulin sensitivity is probably going the wrong way. It's just.
But this is also from someone that's 10 years or more into this. And like you said, you've spent the better part of 5 years with 5K plus calories as a floor. Like this is not something.
That's where I'm going to kick it to you is now I'm pretty, because especially my experience, I'm good at gauging my clients. Like I don't care if you're not hungry, that you could push on for 4 more months without hunger minimum. Dude, I haven't really been that hungry since 2017 when I was prepping. Like no shit. Like I could eat. I'm going to eat a meal after this podcast, but it's not like, damn, I have to eat. I'm fucking starving. Like, no, it's time to eat.
It's time to eat. Yeah, it is. But it's that business-like approach that is going to be part of this next thing that I want to address. So
the point is like, if you, the first meal you come to and you're like, wow, I'm not hungry. That's not a sign to call it. That's like, okay, now the push.
Now we're bodybuilding. Now it's time to fucking dig in and have a fucking plant your flag in the sand and say, now we're bodybuilding. From this point forward, the moment that it becomes uncomfortable, now I'm forcing change, because guess what? No change happens when you remain comfortable. And all this stems, I had a younger client, tall guy, probably 6 foot tall or more, big frame to fill out, wants to be big, wants to compete, wants to be a bodybuilder. I increased his food yesterday he's on 5 meals, so that digestion and timing in between the meals was already a consideration for 5 meals. It's like, hey, you only have to eat 5 times. You can put 3 hours in between each of these meals and get this in, no problem. So this diet, 5 meals, big guy, I yesterday increased the calories to 3,800 calories. Today, 1 day in, I get a message from this client and they say, hey man, I just wanted to run this by you, but I've gotten to the point that all of these meals and all of this food is really starting to be uncomfortable to get down. I'm just wondering if I'm doing something wrong. This is not supposed to be comfortable. Like, think about the endeavor that you've chose. We talk about it all the time. You have chosen an endeavor to where you're going to take raw materials from other dead animals, consume them, and hope that they create new human on your frame. That does not sound like a comfortable process. It is not meant to be a comfortable process. That is when the process begins. Like one of the parts of the message was like, yeah, it feels like I'm force feeding a lot of the time. It feels like I'm force feeding all the time. For Tommy, it has felt like he has been force feeding all the time for 5 years. And Tommy is not as far as he wants to be right now. So, newsflash for anybody that's listening, if you are chasing bodybuilding or adding size to your physique, you want to be a bigger human, you want to be a better, bigger physique competitor, it is not supposed to be comfortable. Most of the time, it's not going to be comfortable. Whether you're in prep, whether you're gaining size, none of these things are comfortable. None of these things are meant for the mediocre or average person. If you are that person, if you are mediocre, if you are average, this is not for you. And you are not meant to do this. Point blank, period.
Yeah, and that goes across the board. That's for, open bodybuilding, classic, women for sure. Like
that's why I said physique competitor. It doesn't matter to what scale or to what context. it is just going to be uncomfortable, period. And you need to embrace that because this is what you signed up for. We talk about it all the time, and not to sound like the old head in the locker room, but fuck, man, like everyone that does this now, it's the popular thing to fucking put a pair of Jordans on and go film yourself in the gym and call yourself a bodybuilder. This used to be like a fucking cult weird thing. My friends and family looked at me like I was a fucking weirdo when I was getting into bodybuilding and I was choosing to do all this stuff. I'm bringing a travel bag full of food just to go watch a football game at my buddy's house. Like I got into this with the perspective of I'm doing something that no one else is comfortable doing. And I took a ton of pride in that. So, you know, if you are just going about your day and you're just going through the motions and you think that all this should just come easy and, oh, weird, you know, it took me a little bit longer to chew all this food. I wonder if I'm doing something wrong. No, motherfucker, this is bodybuilding. It's a war of attrition. You're supposed to wear down the process over 5, 10, 15 years. And then at some point, you're going to look up and say, oh, wow, I'm pretty good now. But fuck, man, like a couple years into the process, and you're wondering if feeling uncomfortable, if you're doing something wrong, that just makes me think that you are not cut out for this. So, man, and, you know, the guy that I'm talking about will hear this. This was a conversation that we already had off air, so he's not going to hear anything new. But as just a thought process for anyone that listens to this, regardless of where you are within your journey, remember what you signed up for and remember why you signed up for this in the first place. Like you want something greater than where you are right now. And it's years away, no matter who you are. If you are listening to this, your physique goals are years away. So buckle up and fucking bear down because it's going to be uncomfortable for a long ass time.
Yeah, we talk about gym equipment a lot, but I think the most used piece of equipment is a fork.
Absolutely.
Or a spoon if you're one of those weirdos. But
oh, that's me. Oh man, I can't. We're fucking
dude.
damn near 30 episodes in, and we haven't gotten on the fork spoon debate. That's wild. I can't believe I've done this many episodes and spent this much time with you, knowing that you're a fork guy. I feel like I've been betrayed and fooled all along.
The fork has more versatility. Like I need to shovel. I don't have time for this.
Bro,
stuff.
a spoon is a shovel. What are we talking about? It's a miniature shovel.
But you can stab with the fork and also get a scoop effect.
What do you need to stab, bro? What are you talking about?
Chicken bites, dude. I got 8 to 10 ounce portions. I stab a chicken.
I cut those. I spend. This is what I do. I spend 20 seconds. I spend 20 seconds after I've weighed out the chicken portion that I need, and with some poultry scissors, I cut it up. And you're always talking about digestion and appetite and everything, bro. Cut your food up real. It's almost like almost
small, like
ground beef. Like I almost cut my chicken so small that it winds up being almost like it's ground.
See,
damn, bro, a fork, Tommy? Really? I feel fucking betrayed, bro.
Dude, I can put my head because I eat out of Tupperware. That's like a trough.
Yeah,
that's a visual for me to see the trough getting closer to empty. A plate is there's no ending. It's I could pick over here. I could pick over here.
No, I'm with you. I'm always eating out of a bowl, but
I actually eat right to left in the Tupperware, and I just put my head down, and I just 5 bites at a time, come up for air, chew, back down to it.
Man,
if you guys want to learn how to eat, watch Rich Piana's first episode of Bigger by the Day. It was a series he did on YouTube. He's eating meal 1, and he's like basically. He's cooked egg whites, but they're barely cooked. They're still liquidy. And he's just eating / drinking them. And then he puts so much water in his oats that it's just you can drink it. And his wording is the best because he says, this meal is not for my fucking enjoyment. This is for a purpose.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 30 years.
Go pull up any, now that I think about it, I should send a Jay Cutler eating video to this client that brought that up because Jay has legendary eating clips online where he's sitting there with seemingly a buffet table full of food. And it's like fucking dried potatoes, dried chicken, and like Gatorade or something. And the camera guy is like, why do you do it doesn't, none of that could possibly taste good. He's like, I'm not eating this for the taste.
I'm eating this for the function of what it does for me.
I think, yeah, you know, I don't really watch Machiavelli Motivation or any of that stuff for the training, but if you watch some of the food montages that he's put together and all the biggest guys of all time and like different off-season looks and the way they're eating, like, first of all, look at their portions. They're eating out of fucking massive bowls.
Bro, you said trough before. I always, when I hear that word,
Dusty
the
taught me
first
that.
thing that I think of is a video of Marcus Rule. He's at an expo. I think he might be at the Olympia Expo.
Yeah.
Bro, I don't have enough screen in this Zoom call to show how big the fucking Tupperware trough was. And he's just eating from it for seemingly an hour.
It takes him to get, and that's another thing. Like, it might take you 40 minutes to chew down all your food. It might take an hour. Guess what? Like, it's part of the job. Like, this doesn't, you don't get a break from this. You're not a football player. You go to practice for 3 hours and then you go home and you're done with that for the day. It's all consuming. So
Yeah.
if you're
And
not
there is
ready
no,
for
like,
that, if you're not ready for that, or you can't live up to that type of standard, well, then this just might not be for you.
Yeah, I think about, because like you know, we have a lot of these same conversations with clients, and
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be like, I've wanted to be taking a cooler everywhere and taking a gallon
too,
jug
dude.
everywhere and like going to
That's what I
restaurants,
said. I take a lot of pride in it. Like, I'm
pulling
showing
out my
up.
own food. Yeah, like
Yeah, fuck yeah.
that's part of like, it's like your job uniform. Like, oh, that
100%.
guy's got a cooler and his own meals at a fucking restaurant. He's about this life.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm
like,
about this regardless of the external situation that I get put in. You can trust I'm about this all the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bodybuilders who, once off season hits, and they're going to be away from the house, dude, let's just get Chipotle. Okay, because that's a meal. You have to take pride, and you have to your actions have to meet your words.
Yes,
the changes you want to see on stage, they're not happening in prep. They're happening in the off season, and that's where uncomfortable amounts of food have to be consumed. Uncomfortable amounts of body weight have to be reached. Man, I have this talk with clients every week, especially women. Like, you're gonna have to be uncomfortably fluffy to put on new levels.
Absolutely.
And that's just the way it is. There used to be, you know, it was kind of different. We've talked about this with different guests. Like, most people just stayed covered up when they were in a contest prep. And now it's, you know, with social media and the need to show yourself every time you're in the gym,
I think more and more though that's bullshit, because we're both doing it. We're both sharing, making posts every day. And go look at my page, dude. I haven't made a post about what I actually look like right now in probably a fucking year. Like, there's so much more to the process. If you're truly that concerned with posting and growing a following and all these different things, like, to where it's a job, like, hey, I have to post every day. It doesn't have to be based on your physique, especially not if you're uncomfortable with it or you're not in prep. Like, there's so much about the lifestyle that you could share otherwise. So, that's an hour for us, buddy. And my blood pressure is a little high, so I think we gotta roll out. I gotta kneel in too.
Good closing.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. For Tommy Stiles, I'm Joseph PIRCHER. That was another episode of A Thinking Man's Podcast. And until next time, guys, we are out. A Thinking Man's Podcast.